Oh, good morning, everyone. We're here at the Holler at KVEC, and I'm talking to April Napier this morning. She's a teacher at Prairie Central, and I'm going to let her tell a little bit about herself, and then we're going to talk about Ripples. And she's got some true stories, some things that have helped her when she uses the program. Okay, it's good to have you here today,
Great to be
April.
here.
You want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your teaching background and everything?
Yes, ma'am. I am a special ed teacher at Perry County Central High School. I'm starting in the middle of my 18th year.
Oh,
I teach the moderate to severe population, and that's what I've always taught.
mm-hmm.
And of the evenings, I also provide behavioral supports to adults
Oh,
as well. So,
that's very interesting. Um, for those of you that are not really familiar with the ripple effects, it's a program. It's a computerized program. It's evidence based, and it's for social emotional learning. And there's over 400 topics, I think, that will pretty much cover everything,
yes,
right, April?
yes,
The students can individually use the program. They can find their own concerns or whatever topic that they're dealing with, and they can do it individually. It can be done as a group, um, and we have a part for teens and we have a part for kids. Now April works with the teens, and she has some really good has had some good success for Ripples. It's an intervention to build personal strengths, to change behavior, address personal problems. Um, it usually takes 15 to 45 minutes for a lesson or a topic, and the kids can kind of go on their own. Is that
mm-hmm.
right, April?
Yes. The great thing about Ripples is it approaches the whole child,
Mm-hmm.
and with school now, of course we're there for the academics and
Right.
to help them achieve the next level in their career, but with Ripples it provides that tool to individualize the needs for the students to begin to approach the whole child.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Good.
if you
Yes.
can't meet the emotional needs, if you can't support their emotional needs, then you will not be successful in growing them from where they came from.
Right. You can't meet those academic needs until you
No,
meet their
ma'am. No,
exactly.
and Ripples really provides the opportunity for teachers to give them that tool on a more private.
Right. That's the part that's really important.
Yes, and the kids, especially teenagers, they're more private, especially when it comes to their mental health,
Right.
until it's too late.
Right.
And
Right.
and this program provides opportunities for the kids to realize, one, you know, they're not the first one to ever experience
Right.
whatever they're going through. Two, it provides options for the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and three, it takes away the shame,
Right.
and
Right.
and it allows the kids to realize, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the first.
Right.
So
And a lot of those topics are very personal,
yes.
and very individualized. But
Mm-hmm.
you can also do some group, like small group with like a topic
Yes.
of bullying or things
Yes.
like that. Have
Yes.
you done that also?
I have. Bullying right now is pretty much targeted
Right.
nationwide,
Right.
and with Ripples, you're able to take like certain topics of this umbrella that they call bullying,
Mm-hmm.
and break it down into social media bullying at the high school level. Right now, social media bullying carries over into the school setting, and often we will have, as a teacher, they'll come up to me and report someone is slandering them
Mm-hmm.
on social media, and I don't have access to it, and I
Right.
was unaware.
Right.
So, that's when my students come in and start making these reports.
Mm-hmm.
I will go into the Ripple Effects program, pull up, appropriate usages of social media,
Right.
or in interactions,
And that's
with
just
peers.
fabulous.
and we will do kind of a holistic,
Yeah.
and then we can do a smaller individual one, and that will in return allow them to step down and do a more individualized.
Yes, and the topics
One.
are just stacked where you
Yes.
can address each part of that. Like you say, it's under an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
That is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to, all the research is there,
Mhm.
everything's there. You just have to get the kid on it.
Yes.
And that's fabulous. So you
Yes.
don't have to wait a week to try to get some strategies or
Mhm.
anything.
You don't
It's
have to
already
search.
there. Right.
You
right.
pull it up, and you know, the term bullying is just this umbrella of behaviors,
Right.
and what the actual behaviors are sometimes get lost
Absolutely.
in that umbrella.
Mhm.
And it's nice to have a program the kids can pull up
Mhm.
and say, okay, bullying, oh, they are uh, making threats
Or calling me
shaming
names, yeah.
or body shaming,
Right.
and that's more of a sensitive topic that the teens will not come to a teacher about.
Right.
So, you know, as a holistic approach, you know, you're able to use this program and pull up bullying,
That's just
and then introduce
wonderful.
each subtopic.
Yeah, and whichever one it hits them,
Mhm.
they can
And
go
then-
straight to
Mhm.
that. That is great.
Yes.
Can you take us through just like, for instance, say you have a child that has this body shaming. Just give us some parts of Ripples that kind of, the true story parts,
Okay.
and what you think is the most effective. Or
Self-esteem.
Mhm.
Self-esteem is number one to instill in these kids.
Mhm.
People will always cut them down. They're looking to cut them down,
Mhm.
and this program allows you to take something like self-esteem, building,
Like taking responsibility,
right,
or even talking to yourself how to
right,
deal with those things.
Yes, and
Mhm.
this program can go from discussing obesity in
Mhm.
teens, and it doesn't. The way it goes about it is in a positive, you know.
Right.
And it provides them that foundation of, okay,
Mhm.
this is where you're at, this is where we're going to be, this
Okay.
is where we're going to be.
And it also gives them other topics that lead
Yes.
into,
Yes.
it'll lead into other topics that they can
Yes.
do on that lesson.
Mhm.
And it has like a little game, and they have points.
Mhm.
And what about the data that you can collect from the ripple effects?
The data is, and I usually hate when people say the word data to me,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh God, here we
You're
go.
dated out.
But
yeah.
it is just perfect.
Yeah.
It's easy to access. It's easy to understand.
Mhm.
It tells you what they've done. I will use that data. Let's say they have completed this. They've earned this amount of points within this game.
Mhm.
I'm not comfortable with still how they are, the comments they're making about themselves.
Right.
So I'm going to keep.
So they're not just going through the motions,
Yes,
but they're
yes,
internalizing
yes.
this.
And the way the data is arranged, you can see
Yeah, that is great.
if they are utilizing it and they
Mhm.
are understanding it, and if they are willing to accept what this
Right,
program can.
Yeah. And this program is just so accessible for students and for your staff
Yes.
also. So, for instance, we do want to say that this is not a special needs program.
No,
this
no,
is
ma'am.
for any
No, ma'am.
child.
Yes, ma'am.
All children.
And I recommend it for any child.
Exactly.
At the high school level, especially.
Exactly. And
middle school, of course.
Yeah. And it's not a program that is that can fix problems that need professional help.
Of course.
These are things that the social emotional learning, that part that we have to help students with, that it would really do that, but it could lead to more things that are evident.
Right. Every year teachers are trained on suicide prevention.
Right.
And this program, and that's teaching the more the emotional portion of the child. And this program, it not only gives them coping skills, but it gives them information who to contact.
Right.
how to contact them, you
Mhm.
know, and they can access that information at their home. Let's say they get
Um,
home and
yes.
they've had a bad day, they're overwhelmed, and they can take this program and they can go home and they can pull it up on their iPhone, on their tablet, you know,
Anything,
and
yeah.
that's one thing I like about this program. You're not Mac based, you're not Microsoft
Right.
based.
You don't have
It's
to be one spot to do this. You
right,
get, and if anything comes
right,
up, they can access it right then.
right.
And back to teachers or staff, for instance, if you have maybe they have a student that's not a special needs student, and they come to you for help
Mm-hmm.
though, um, they can do RTI, and it has strategies
Mm-hmm.
and some professional development that
Mm-hmm.
for instance, maybe they have a student that they suspect has ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
You can go right there and say, "This is what you can do to help that
Mm-hmm.
child. These are some things that you can do. Some lessons that they will need."
Absolutely.
And I hope, and I know you're such a great advocate for the ripple effects and for your students. And I know you've spread the good news
I
about
have,
it,
yes.
and how much it has worked.
Yes.
That and it has, the evidence
Mm-hmm.
shows it.
Yes.
Um, April, could you give us an example of a student, without using names, which
Of course.
we know,
Of course.
just one that has used the ripple effects and you've noticed such a change?
Oh yes. I have, over the last few years, I have had an influx of SEL placements, you know, foster placements, temporary, and those kids came in, and one young lady in particular, she was a cutter, and she was
and that's hard to deal
and
with.
and that is hard to deal with. That is something that, you know, the teacher side of me, I really don't know how to go about treating that. You know,
Yeah.
I can't. That
You-
requires
Right.
and that's when I immediately turn to ripple effects.
Mhm.
I go home, I log on to ripple effects under my
Mhm.
account, and I start looking at these lessons that ripple effects offer. Then I sit and I watch them, and
Right.
I go through them, and I look at it on the teacher aspect. Then I also go through and do a student module to see what she's going to. And then I actually go into school the next day, and we do a umbrella lesson over coping skills.
Right.
And this is how I introduce it.
Yes.
And then I have them in small groups. They pick a coping skill that they feel is the strongest suit for them. And then after that, we do an individualized one. And then they pick a self behavior that they feel they need to work on. And I just tip it, I just walk by, and I already know where it's at because I had researched it the night before. And I tap her on her shoulder, and I'm like, "Why don't you do this one?" And I just look at her and smile and wink.
And nobody knows.
knew.
Private.
I walked away. I gave her set of headphones. She puts them in. She watches it, and I'm wandering around the classroom, and I'm keeping an eye on her. And I notice she just keeps getting more intent with it. And we talked about, after she finished her lesson, we talked about it separately to the side. She came back, and we talked about coping skills and things she could do, and of course she was expressing more of a therapist conversation to me, and going by what ripples affect and the lessons I done the previous night. I knew I could really get in there with a coping skill for her.
Right.
And what we came up with was, and the one you and I talked about, I would give her a crayon and a piece of paper, and she would just, mimic that cutting motion along that. And I attribute all of that to Ripple's effect, because it provided me that background. It provided me that opportunity to reach her at that point.
Right.
Because as a teacher, it's hard for me to walk up and go, "Hey, I know." We know what's
sometimes
going on.
And sometimes you don't know.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Right.
And so, that's just one success story I chalk up to ripple effect.
And that, might I say, is a great success story, because we all know cutters are, it's a hard coping skill
it is
to manage. And just to know that this program has helped a child like that, it's worth it all, isn't it?
And another one is hunger.
Yes.
Coming in hungry, kids coming in hungry, they're given all these behaviors. And I was able to once again do a umbrella, as I call it, lesson as a whole classroom over friendship, appropriate friendships. And this is how I introduced appropriate friendships. Now, my goal here wasn't to target the child that was hungry and having the behaviors. My goal was to target the classroom in order to keep them from instigating and to kind of to understand without knowing who. And so we talked about when you wake up every morning, what's your routines, and we talked about all this, and we finally got into, when you are hungry, what are you nice to be around? Just simple.
Or do you get hangry?
Or do you get hangry, right? And we came to the conclusion we get pretty hangry.
Right.
And they kind of realized, well, what's some of the behaviors you do when, I get mad, I hit, I'll throw stuff.
Right.
And you've seen the light bulb start coming on.
They just realized why.
And the next day, and that's really all it took, and we finished the module, and we finished that umbrella conversation as a class. And then the next day, I've got kids coming in, and there's breakfast waiting on the desk for everyone. There is, good morning, how are you?
Yes.
And I actually had one student come by and say, I get it now.
Yeah.
And you've got to keep in mind the population of students I'm working with.
Right.
My
and
kids.
We're in a poverty area.
Yes. And my kids, they have a harder time grasping that empathy to others.
Right.
And the way these are set up, and the way these modules are set up,
and you even have one for empathy.
The empathy, and it's and as a teacher, I love it, because if I see something going on, I will pull it up and I will look at the model. What do they suggest?
Yes,
and
there's so many different aspects of ripples, the ripple effects. You can pretty much do anything you need. You can do RTI. You can do lesson plans. You can do IEPs. All those things, and it's just multifaceted. But April, we are so glad to have you here today and to hear those success stories.
Yes.
And we may come back next month and have a couple more that we could go through.
Absolutely.
So, any advice you would give to teachers that are not fully using the Ripple Effects program?
Yes. My one piece of advice is, don't immediately react to the behavior. Figure out the source, your antecedent. Fix the antecedent, and you'll fix the behavior. This source, this program provides you with hundreds and hundreds of tools to assist with the child, not short-term fixing of behavior.
Right, absolutely.
And if you don't, punishment is necessary sometimes.
Right, consequences, right.
Not all the time.
Not exactly.
If the behavior's consistent, there's a reason. Find out that reason. You find out that reason, you put the correct tools in that student's hands, you will fix that behavior.
Oh, that's great. And We're so glad you came. So we'll maybe get to see you next month again. Everybody, this is April Napier, and we're just so happy to have her here. And I'm Bronna Francis, and we'll say goodbye from the holler. Thank you.
Thank you all.